Hey, good morning. It's Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. We've got so much to get to this morning. Fired FEMA worker. Yes, we're going to be talking about that. She says, I was taking orders from the higher ups when I was told to ignore the homes, the North Carolina homes, the Southeast homes that had Trump signs. So I was told to ignore those homes and did not provide aid. This is what a fired FEMA worker is disclosing now. So we're going to chat more about that. Also, CNN laying off hundreds of employees after massive drops in ratings. Well, I could have seen that coming. They weren't doing so well in the ratings to begin with, but now after the election, they have had a massive drop in ratings. Because they're irrelevant. They're no longer the propagandists for the Democrat Party, and they serve no purpose. Okay, so Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy, they're going to save you millions of dollars. We're going to walk you through some of the misspending, I guess, or some of the misuse of taxpayer funds at a federal level here. They're going to save you millions upon millions of dollars, Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy. And I see, you got two guys for one job. Now, come on now. Both these guys, they run successful companies. They're entrepreneurs. Elon Musk has experience in this. He went into Twitter and gutted that whole operation. And it's still a successful business. So they've got experience in operating successful businesses. And I think that it will take two of them to kind of hold each other accountable. They're doing it kind of outside of the government. I doubt that these guys are going to take any kind of salary to do this. But I mean, this whole argument that, it doesn't take two people to do this. No, it does. And you're going to realize how bad it really is when I tell you what we're wasting the money on. And if we can have two guys get in there and cut it all up and just let it sink in, as Elon Musk said when he went in and he gutted Twitter, let that sink in that Vivek Ramaswamy and Elon Musk are going to save you millions of dollars. So let's start with this FEMA, this FEMA worker that got fired. As always, you can text me at 309-451-9299. You can find me on YouTube and subscribe to the channel. That's the Conservative Cat Show. We've got so much to get to today. It's a Thursday, so Friday Eve, as I like to call Thursdays. 6:08 a.m. This is a daily show, 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. Let's get to FEMA and how they've wasted tons of funding on foreign nationals simply because these foreign nationals broke federal immigration laws, right? We're housing illegal immigrants. We're giving them credit cards. We're putting them up in hotels. So they wasted all of these taxpayer dollars on funding and giving money to foreign nationals just because they broke federal immigration laws. But they reportedly instructed teams. So FEMA, they instructed teams that were responding to the hurricane there in North Carolina and other states. They were instructed to ignore homes for politically incorrect lawn signs. I'm not making this up. So not only did they dedicate resources to foreigners, but they deliberately withheld money, aid, supplies from the very people they were tasked to help. Okay, so they were tasked to help people of North Carolina, and if they had politically incorrect lawn signs in their yard, they were told and they were instructed to not provide aid. Okay, now, my dad calls me up and he was telling me a little bit about the story, and, it just doesn't quite pass the sniff test to me. Now, what's really weird here is that you've got yard signs, right? Nobody has a lawn sign up. I don't think it's people's first priority to get a lawn sign up shortly after, a hurricane. There's no lawn signs up, right? It's a hurricane. People lost trees. Their yards are flooded. Nobody's got yard signs up. So I'm going to get to that here in a second. But I think that the story, all of it, is kind of bunk. The fired supervisor who told her team to skip homes with Trump signs is alleging that she was taking orders from the higher ups. And although they may or may not be true, She could have been a lone wolf in this. She may have, told them on her own. Like, she's the supervisor and she's the one who said not to do this. She's alleging now that she was instructed from the top of FEMA to do this. That may or may not be true, but it doesn't make this any less reprehensible. Okay, this story is just reprehensible, and it's weird. So, it does suggest that there is a systematic problem in the bureaucracy, and everybody already knew that there was a systematic problem in this bureaucracy, in the FEMA bureaucracy, because people weren't getting aid. I'm sure you have family members, or you saw all of the videos where people were getting out there and saying, hey, we haven't gotten aid. We haven't received aid yet. I'm sure that you've gotten this, or that you understand that there was a broken system in this bureaucracy. I want to play this clip. This is the FEMA worker who was fired for telling people and instructing her team to not provide aid to houses that had Trump signs or politically incorrect lawn signs. So take a listen.
Not go to those homes. Go and canvass the other homes. Your job is to keep these people safe. They need to be able to go back home safe.
All right. So to unpack this, basically this video, she said that her supervisors, the people at the top of FEMA, they're the ones who instructed her to tell her team not to go to the houses that had the Trump signs. Now, I know people are innocent until proven guilty, and the left always blames this on incompetence, and they're trying to say, oh, it was because it's because we didn't feel safe. We didn't feel safe, and they blamed it on the kind of this incompetence. But here's the thing: if you're deleting files, she was talking about how FEMA, the top officials, they obviously have access to her account. She saw that they were deleting files. I don't know. Sketchy behaviors like that tell me that you have something to hide. So here's what the story is. Okay, I'm going to give you the story, but then I have some thoughts here. Marnie Washington was sacked for telling disaster relief workers. So she was fired for telling relief workers in Florida to not go to homes with yard signs supporting President Donald Trump. This is what the FEMA administrator, Deanne Criswell, said on Saturday. This is a clear violation of FEMA's core values and principles to help people regardless of their political affiliation. This employee has been terminated, and we have referred the matter to the Office of Special Counsel. This is what the FEMA director administrator, this top level person, Deanne, has said that we're referring this out. This is a direct violation of core values. Okay, so somebody got fired for this. It's this woman, this FEMA worker. I will continue to do everything I can to make sure that this never happens again. The disturbing directive was allegedly made in late October as Washington, she's 39, worked with a FEMA team in Central Florida town in wake of Hurricane Milton. Okay, so what do you think would have happened if Trump did not win the presidency? Any chance she would have been promoted? Most likely they're doing this because Trump is the president-elect, and they're trying to kind of make her the fall guy, and they're deleting files. I think that this goes even further. I don't think it has anything to do with Trump signs. I'm willing to bet those deleted files she's talking about, they were directives from the tippity top of the bureaucracy, FEMA, and they were directives telling people to avoid red areas and avoid certain counties that vote a certain way, because there's no way after a hurricane, even Hurricane Milton, which wasn't as bad as Hurricane Helene, but even hurricanes like Hurricane Milton, very rarely are you going to see yard signs up, right? The wind takes it out. There's no way that somebody gave a direct order, hey, avoid houses with Trump signs. What I think is actually going on is that FEMA, they cooked up this story, right? They made Washington, this girl, this woman, they made her the fall guy, and they're going to try to say, hey, look, Trump, we are, sticking to our core values as FEMA, and we have, principles that say that, we have to help people regardless of their political affiliation. I think that this story is completely cooked up. It's completely bunked. It's actually much worse than what they're letting on. It's not just one girl or one, rogue supervisor who told her FEMA team to not go to houses with Trump signs. She's talking about people deleting files. I bet it goes even further. I bet they are actually directing people to not go to red areas, to not go to red counties. I think that is more likely to be true. So the federal government has proven they are not in it for the American people. If that's not tyranny, I don't know what is. The response to the hurricanes in Florida, Georgia, North Carolina showed a severe lack of remorse for human life. And this is the best FEMA can pretend to do, is that they care. It is to fire somebody and have somebody, fall on their sword or be a scapegoat. Really, I think that's what this is. I think it's a cooked up story. I don't even believe it. I think that FEMA, it's so much worse. The top officials of FEMA probably directed multiple FEMA teams to not go to predominantly red areas or red counties. So it's pathetic. It's pathetic. They're trying to say, hey, look, we fired somebody. Hey, look, we're sticking to our core values of providing aid to people despite political affiliation. Don't fire us, Mr. Trump. Please don't fire us. If this story were actually true, which I don't believe it is, she probably would have gotten promoted if Trump hadn't gotten the presidency, right? This FEMA worker who was fired. They just fired her because she has to be the scapegoat. She has to be the fall guy, so that way they can point to somebody and say, hey, Mr. Trump, we didn't do that. We didn't withhold aid. We had one bad apple who was telling people to not provide aid to Trump houses or to houses with Trump signs. I don't even believe that there were houses with Trump signs. Definitely not enough of them to avoid because it's a hurricane. How do you keep a yard sign up when there's a hurricane? I got 140-mile-per-hour wind and it took out the sign, the Trump sign that we've got in our yard. So, yeah. I do want to talk about CNN. They're laying off hundreds of employees. We'll be right back with that. I'm Conservative Cat. Hey, good morning. It's Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. So much to get to this morning. I do want to talk about Peanut the squirrel a little bit later. Turns out Peanut, the squirrel, his assassination, the officials, they had ordered that assassination, that euthanation, a week prior to getting squirrel napped. So the New York officials, they busted in, they euthanized him. They knew that they were going to euthanize him prior to busting into the house and kidnapping the squirrel. They had orders a week before to euthanize that squirrel. So it was all planned. They planned to go in there and euthanize the squirrel, Peanut. So rest in peace, Peanut. We're going to get to that story here in just a little bit. But prior to taking the break, I was telling you about Marnie Washington. She was a FEMA supervisor, who told her team to not provide aid to those with Trump signs. And it just doesn't pass the sniff test to me. I think it's a cooked up story, really, by FEMA to try to divert our attention from the real story, which is that FEMA probably gave orders from the tippity top to all the FEMA teams to avoid red areas and to avoid providing aid to red counties, people who went Donald Trump back in 2020. I'm willing to bet that's more truthful than, one FEMA director, one gal, she directed her team not to go to the yards with the Trump signs in them. I don't even believe that there were yards with Trump signs. I mean, after a hurricane rips through, there's probably barely any Trump signs there. So that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. But she got fired. And I think the whole thing is to kind of make her a scapegoat. FEMA is now pretending to care. They're like, okay, our response, wasn't all that great. And here's our fall guy. We fired someone kind of as a scapegoat to pretend to care about this issue. But then they turn around and they're deleting files. I'm willing to bet that those files are emails back and forth directing all the FEMA teams that responded in not only Florida, but in Georgia, North Carolina, Florida, all of these Southeast states. And it directed these FEMA teams to not provide aid to red county specific areas. I'm willing to bet that is more of a truthful story than this one woman told one team that there was, or that they weren't going to provide aid to yards with Trump signs. So I want to talk about CNN because they're largely irrelevant now, and they're laying off hundreds of employees because that's what happens when you work for a PR campaign for the Democratic Party, and the Democratic Party loses so big. So according to the Daily Mail, CNN is wielding an axe on some of its high-paid staff after dismal election ratings. So during the election cycle, they had bad ratings. I mean, their ratings just plummeted because they were a Democrat PR campaign, and people were sick and tired of tuning into that. So it was a disastrous period. The election cycle was a disastrous period for cable news networks. And here's the thing. People are not going to tune in to propagandists anymore. We just won't do it. Okay, so they can't afford to pay their propagandists like Anderson Pooper anymore, or Chris Wallace. So Chris Wallace, he left. So he left shortly before probably getting let go. Yesterday, the news broke that he left. So he kind of did this, you can't fire me, I'm leaving. And he said, I'm going to go into the podcast world now. Oh, come on. Chris Wallace, nobody ever said this. I care about what Chris Wallace thinks. Nobody has ever said that once. But this is CNN, and this is the reason why, okay, they can't afford to pay their propagandists anymore. It's because they let things like this go on CNN panels. Take a listen here.
Don't believe boys should play girls' sports.
They're not boys. I'm not going to listen to transphobia at this table. I am not going to listen to you call a trans girl a boy.
Are you going to allow me to finish my explanation?
When you use a word that's a slur, I'm going to interrupt. That's not how it is. They're not boys. They're not boys. They're not playing girls' softball. I'm not going to sit there and listen
for a second because, look, this is...
Okay, people won't tune in to crybabies and adults who are supposed to be having a conversation about the news. People will not tune in to crybabies who cry when people use language that they don't like. Okay, it's that simple. The American people are not having it just because he said the term boy instead of what, cis male or cis male, and he wasn't going to acquiesce or bend the knee to the leftist language, and he referred to boys as boys and girls as girls. Take a listen to what Abby Phillip does here. She actually like butts it. Like, I think that we're just too tolerant. When somebody gets out there and says, no, you can't call boys boys anymore, you have to call them cis males or something like that. That is just ridiculous. When somebody does that, there is no room for debate. It is not even a controversial topic. You are trying to change language, and I'm not going to let you do it. That's what Abby Phillip should say right here. She should say, look, he is referring to boys as boys because that's the term that everybody has used since the beginning of time. So we're going to allow him to use that term, okay? And you're just going to have to suck it up, pull up your diaper, and relax. Okay, he's going to use the term boy, and if that's triggering you, then you can leave. Get off the panel because you're not an adult. But of course, Abby Phillip didn't do that. She did this.
This is a really heated issue, right? And Michael, I know you. I know that you understand that people have different views on this. I think out of respect for Jay, let's try to talk about this in a way that is respectful.
Okay, so let me rephrase this since I'm being targeted here.
I don't. No, just to be clear, you are not being.
But I am. But it's okay.
I'm specifically saying that I know that you are not intending to be transphobic.
He should know that I'm not.
But
he wants to sit
I'm
here
not
and
calling you
bloviate.
transphobic.
I
I'm
want
saying
you
you're
to.
using
I
a
want
phrase
to
that
give you an
know.
opportunity.
So the way regular people
that's
interpret it,
that's not
which is why
regular
those
people.
ads were
That's not regular people. There's no consensus that these are actually boys. This whole thing about trans girls is a canard. We're talking about a tiny, tiny sliver of the population.
That may be the
and
case,
we're using
but
that
my point in
to
terms
take
of
away
its
healthcare from
effectiveness.
thousands of people.
Hold on, just get to your point.
My point in terms of its effectiveness. Regular people with children look at these things and they say, you know what? This is a bit too far. I do not agree with this. I don't like this. I think Democrats are going way too much to the left on social issues. They're uncomfortable with it. A lot of people believe that. A lot of families believe that. You may disagree with that reality, but that's why Republicans kept running those ads over and over and over again, because they saw the metrics suggested
and
that they were
lying
working.
in those ads over and over again and using rhetoric like you just used, saying this is boys playing girls sports. First of all, we're talking about 5 people in the entire country.
You would prefer?
We're talking about trans girls being allowed to play with the people who are in their gender. And if you don't believe, you don't have to listen to me. Listen to the American Medical Association, the American Psychological Association.
The American Medical Association.
Right there, what he does is, so he tries to manipulate language first. He gets upset because this guy, he says, Jay, I believe it is, he says, hey, let's call them boys, let's call them boys, let's call them girls, okay? And he tries to manipulate the language and says that it's transphobic to refer to boys as boys, okay, to refer to trans girls as boys. And he says it's transphobic. Then he loses that argument, or then he goes for the appeal to authority argument, where he says, well, all the experts say that they are women. And I mean, this is the kind of nonsense that goes on CNN, and the American people cannot take it anymore. Okay, this is the reason why this journalism industry is not trusted. There's no trust in this system. So I'm going to take a quick break, but you're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9. Hey, go ahead and smash that like button. We're going to be right back talking a little bit more about CNN. You know, that clip with that guy where he starts melting down over the fact that this other guy on the panel started referring to trans girls. Trans girls, that's men who are pretending to be women. He referred to them as boys. And he just loses his mind and starts to says, "Oh, you're transphobic, you're transphobic, you're transphobic." The problem in America is that we are way too tolerant of these people. The Abby Phillips, being the moderator of this panel, she should have stepped in and she should have said, "Hey, now look, you're accusing him of being transphobic. He's simply using language that you don't like. You need to relax or you need to get off the panel." Okay, that's what should have been done, but it wasn't done, and the American people thought it was ridiculous, and that's the reason why. And this is what goes on CNN every single day, and people are done tuning in because it's a joke. I mean, come on, you're not going to refer to boys as boys and girls as girls, and really, what I think that this election was all about, and you can argue with me all you want. You can say, "Oh, it's the economy," and it was just the economy. I think that was a big part, but another large part was, I think it was the revenge of Americans, and they were trying to say, "Hey, you know, I'm sick and tired of how far left we've gone socially. You know, I'm not okay with men being in my little girl's bathroom. I'm not okay with boys beating the pulp out of my little girl on the soccer field or on the volleyball field or on the volleyball court. I'm not okay with that." And that's why you saw these boys, Gen Z, right? Younger generation of men. I think I don't think they're having deep, intimate conversations about policy and about what Donald Trump will do as president. We've talked intimately here on this program about policy, about how Donald Trump, people ask me why I'm voting for Donald Trump. Number one, was not going to vote for Kamala Harris because there was something called the PRO Act, which was this labor law that she promised to sign. It's been kind of tossed in the House and Senate for quite some time, but what it would do, it would raise the minimum wage, I think, to like $15 or $15 an hour federally, but it would also eliminate freelance workers, because you'd have to treat freelance workers as full-time employees. And what's going to happen there is corporations are just going to lay off their full-time or their freelance workers because they can't afford to keep them on full-time, right? I'm a freelance worker. I love freelancing. And, you know, with that law, had Kamala Harris, she said that she would sign it day one. Had she had signed that, I might not have a job, right? That was one reason why I voted yes for Donald Trump. Another reason was, you know, and these are intricate policies. I voted because of intricate policies. That the policies is what mattered to me. The tariffs, raising the tariffs, bringing industries back to Illinois. I want to see people have more job, more opportunity here in the States, in the United States, because everybody's shipping their companies off to places like Brazil, Mexico, because it's cheaper. The tariffs are going to help that. But these men, these Gen Z men, I think that they care more about the social issues. They're sick and tired of having to not refer to boys as boys, men as men, and girls as girls, in fear of, you know, being accused or being accused of transphobia. They're sick of it. That's why they went to the ballot box and they voted Donald Trump. Woohoo! Mass layoffs at CNN. Well, I could have seen this coming. Apparently, they had a huge drop off in ratings during the election cycle during this period of time. I could have seen that happening because they were nothing but a PR campaign for the Democratic Party. Now they're largely irrelevant because who are you campaigning for? You know, the Democrat Party, they lost. So there's definitely no need for you anymore, cable news network. So before we did break, I played this clip of this guy on the CNN panel, and he's saying that, you know, it was transphobic to refer to boys as boys and girls as girls. And that's why CNN, they can't afford to pay their propagandists anymore. The Jake Tappers, the Wolf Blitzers, they were both denied raises. You had Chris Wallace, he fled CNN. He departed CNN before probably he was going to be laid off. But there's a reason why journalism is constitutionally protected. It's a constitutionally protected profession. I went to school for journalism, a freelance journalist, and they are not in the business of holding the government accountable. Okay, now I bring this up. I was on I think it was Instagram or something. I was scrolling and I saw the INBA, which is the Illinois News Broadcasters Association. They had invited Eric Sorensen, a sitting congressman, to be their guest speaker. Out of all of the award-winning journalists and people who have exposed amazing things, there's so many good journalists out there. They decided to have somebody in government be their guest speaker. He's a new congressman. He hasn't really done anything, right? He's a weatherman. Outside of that, I just don't get it. You're supposed to be in the business of holding the government accountable, but you're inviting the government to be your guest speakers at your conventions, and they turn a blind eye to everything as long as it benefits their leftist agenda. They covered up Joe Biden's mental decline for years. They backed and they pushed a candidate who got 0 votes in the primaries. So it's not surprising that they have lost all relevance with the American people, because the American people understand that journalism is supposed to be a profession where you hold the government accountable, and that's the exact opposite of what CNN does. And it's not just CNN, it's MSNBC. They saw a dramatic decline in viewership amidst the election cycle. Joy Reid, her ratings were down 54%. Morning Joe, down 39%. Andrea Mitchell, 39%. Stephanie Rule, 67%. I could go on, but it's for reasons like this. I'm going to play a clip from MSNBC. This is the reason why people are tuning out of cable news networks.
It's a pure Project 2025 in miniature in Florida. And that kind of extreme, sort of extremist, right-wing, fascist type government in Florida, does that make it a more attractive place? It's a pure Project 2025 in miniature in Florida. And that kind of extreme, sort of extremist, right-wing, fascist.
No. Well, and she was obviously referring to the abortion. They projected that the abortion amendment, which was backed by Governor J.B. Pritzker, by the way, was rejected. She was talking about how Florida is a fascist regime. Okay, it's probably one of the most populated states in the country. I've got plenty of friends, family who live down there, and they say that it's a nightmare to drive because there's so many people on the road, because there's just so many people who live there. So this is not news. That was not news. She lied, one, about Project 2025. Project 2025 was not Donald Trump's. He's tried to say that several times, and he's come out and removed, and he said, hey, I have nothing to do with it. I have absolutely nothing to do with Project 2025. It's not news. It was an attempt to paint Trump as Hitler, and it backfired big time. So it's unlikely that the media is going to learn from their lesson and actually start to report on real things that Americans care about. But I could really care less, because guess what? Podcasting, independent media, people on X, Tucker Carlson, Joe Rogan, these platforms, they have gotten so huge. Now the age of mainstream media is dead. It's gone. It's irrelevant. So the next presidential election is too far away, but we can almost be certain that the next candidate will literally be Hitler, because they've been calling, the mainstream news has been calling Republican candidates Hitler since Reagan. Okay, so I think we can expect more of the same from these networks. This drop in ratings is not going to be a wake-up call for them at all, and independent media is just going to grow. INBA, right? The Illinois News Broadcasters Association, they invited a government hack, Eric Sorensen, to be their speaker. I can think of so many other journalists that they could have. There was this one guy, Seymour Hersh. He's one of my favorite journalists. He actually exposed on his Substack that we were behind the Nord Stream pipeline. And It was a great Substack. I think that was the best story within the last couple of years. He exposed all of it. And I mean, people like that. Why don't you invite people like that onto your program or onto your platforms, Illinois News Broadcasters Association, and have them speak? You invited a sitting congressman. That is like literally the antithesis of what journalism is supposed to be. You're supposed to be adversarial with the government. You're supposed to hold the government accountable. All right, I do have to take a quick break, but you're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9.
Experience the ultimate surge of energy and focus with Patriot Pump pre-workout, formulated to ignite your workout sessions. This powerhouse blend primes your body for peak performance. Elevate your training regimen and conquer your fitness goals with Patriot Pump pre-workout. Whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, as working for the Lord, not for human masters. It is the Lord Christ you are serving. Patriot Pump, through a balanced, carefully crafted formula, shifts your focus and you'll find yourself in the gym more and improving God's creation, you. Our bodies aren't perfect, but striving to live righteously and healthy is something that the enemy will tell you is too hard. Through our ministry and formula, we plan to spread the gospel and motivate Americans to lead more righteous, healthy lives.
Here it is, Patriot Pump. You guys can get it today by visiting patriotpumpenergy.com, patriotpumpenergy.com. You can use promo code FB at checkout to get a deep discount. I love this stuff. I drink it every day. It's really great. This is our company. My husband and I started it. We believe that the only way for you to grow really spiritually is to be in a right physical form, mental form, and you have to start working out and protecting your temple and working out and getting to a peak physical fitness. I think it helps with your spiritual man, having your physical man and your mental man align, and this stuff helps with both. It keeps you focused, it keeps you fit. It's got some really great stuff in there. It's got some creatine, it's got some caffeine. It's really good stuff. So it's a premium pre-workout, so it's not cheap. But it's a Christian conservative company. And we love working out. And we always encourage people, hey, work out your physical man. It'll help you in your spiritual journey. Once I always, when I pray while I run. And I don't know what that is, but I feel like you can get closer to God when you are physically there and when you don't have to worry about your physical health. So it's a great supplement. We are going to be chatting a little bit more about Elon Musk, Vivek, Ramaswamy. They're leading the Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, to protect Americans from government wasting insane amounts of money. I've got a couple of examples of government wasting insane amounts of money. Millions on shrimp. Yes, shrimp. And I'm not talking, shrimp that you eat. They didn't spend $3 million of taxpayer money to feed the hungry. No. They spent $3 million to get a shrimp to run on a treadmill. No, quite literally, that's what they did. They were, I think, trying to get the shrimp to run on the treadmill in cold water and in hot water to see how it kind of reacted. It was like a global warming study or whatever. And that's where their priorities are, by the way, to see if shrimp react differently in cold water and hot water. I don't know how it takes $3 million to figure that out, but you could have gotten some Home Depot buckets and filled one with hot water, one with cold water, and seen how they reacted that way. But they spent $3 million on that study, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense. The founding fathers would be losing their minds. Back then, they tax the tea. They tax their beverage, okay, by like a couple of percent. Like it was like 2% increase in their taxes for their tea. It was a beverage. they would be losing their minds. And every 4th of July, I kind of point this out. There's fireworks displays that the city puts on every year. The founding fathers, the people who founded this country back in 1776, would be shocked to find out that we spend thousands upon thousands of dollars for those firework displays. They'd be like, what are you doing? What's wrong with you? What's wrong with your backyard? Why don't you just do it? Oh, wait. So the city, they'll ban you from doing firework displays yourself, because they want to take your money to do it. Yes. So every year I bring that up because it's like, wait a second, why are we spending taxpayer dollars on firework displays? I've never understood that. I mean, I love 4th of July as much as the next guy. And I'll continue to say it on this program. Anything that the public sector does, the private sector could do it 10 times better. And I've got proof of that. So the Biden administration, they actually spent $5 billion to build EV stations, EV charging stations. Now, I don't know why it costed this much for such little payout, like 7 charging stations. That's not a whole lot. I don't know why it costed that much, other than, they bidded this out and they didn't take the lowest bid. They could have bidded it out and found somebody to do it much cheaper, Tesla even. Woo! Hey, good morning. It's Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. So excited for the DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, to protect Americans from the government wasting insane amounts of money. Today's show is going to break that down. The government, they definitely need a task force to stopping these bureaucrats wasting large amounts of cash for reasons, I mean, you can't even think of. I mean, these are terrible reasons to spend money on. Terrible. Like, okay, maybe we should spend money on that. And nobody should spend this amount of money on this ever. And I've got a couple of examples, but according to Fox News, Trump said that the pair are going to work together to dismantle government bureaucracy / excessive access regulation and cut wasteful expenditures. And they're going to restructure the federal agencies. So I'm so excited for this. Republican politicians have dreamed about the objectives of DOGE for a very long time. And I honestly, it used to be Democrats too. I mean, back in 1996, you remember Bill Clinton talking about small government. The Democrats used to be all for this, but it only got worse since Bill Clinton. So since 1996, we've just been spending trillions and trillions of dollars. So President-elect Trump said that Musk and Ramaswamy are going to provide advice and guidance from outside of the government. And they're going to partner with the White House. So this is like a government agency, but they're going to be outside of the government. So they are, obviously not bureaucrats from within the government. So they're not going to be biased when looking at this because they're from outside the government. They're entrepreneurs. They're visionaries. They've done it in their own businesses. So they're going to kind of be like an outside third party coming in and partnering with the White House to drive a large-scale structural reform and create an entrepreneurial approach to government never before seen. So this is exciting. Now I want to get into what the government has spent your tax dollars on. And buckle up, because this is going to be, it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing. So in one specific example I want to share, $500,000, that's $500,000, to trans monkeys, to create transgender monkeys to address, quote, social injustices. They transed the monkeys to see how they would react to the procedures. Now, this was all done under the leadership of Dr. Anthony Fauci, Tony, the man that, demanded you follow the science. He's out there, transing monkeys, like actually putting monkeys through transgender procedures. What? I've got more foolish examples next. You're listening to Conservative Cat. You're going to really want to stick around for these. At the top of the hour, be sure to find me on YouTube and on Rumble and subscribe today. Hey, good morning. Go ahead and smash that like button. We'll have more examples next. But yes, we also have to talk a bit about Chicago and their ways. So this happens at every level of government. I shared with you actually with the county auditor. They tried to say that, eliminating the auditor position would address, wasteful spending. That's what the Democrats are, excuse me, League of Women Voters, but I repeat myself. That's what their organization had, been pushing. They were saying, it's just wasteful spending having a county auditor. Actually, that's doesn't make any sense because the county auditor is the guy who actually goes out there and tries to eliminate wasteful spending or call it out. So I thought that was kind of funny that you had the Democrats or League of Women Voters out there trying to say that. But then I looked into it, and at McLean County level, now I didn't do a deep dive on this. I'm willing to bet that I could find more examples. But at McLean County, at that level of government, you had two people paid over, I think it was like $90,000 each. Now that's more than the county auditor. You had those people, and they had the exact same job title, environmental health supervisor program. I don't even know what kind of environmental health projects you're doing here in McLean County, but okay. But there's two of them. So the Chicago Public Schools, they are probably the greatest example of government misspending taxpayer dollars. You had the Chicago Public Schools spend an increasing amount of taxpayer funds on balloon displays in the last 5 years. Yes, balloon displays. You heard me correctly. You will not believe this statistic. You're going to love this statistic, okay? The district has spent over $500,000 on balloon-related vendors since 2019. So over the past few years, you've got them spending almost over $500,000 on, I'm going to throw this statistic up just so that way you can see this. This number, well over $600,000 on balloons. Balloons. Let me reiterate this. Balloons. That's what they're doing, and the kids can't read and write, and you're out there spending all this money on balloons. I mean, that's insane. That's insanity. I mean, so that's over 2019 to 2024. That's 2025, 6 years, something like that. Let me see if my math right. 2020, 21, 22, 23, 24. Yeah, 5 years. So, I mean, that's a salary for a teacher. You could have, they're always complaining about, not enough teachers in the classroom, not getting paid enough as teachers. That could have funded those balloons. Say you just stopped with the balloon displays, okay? Or you went to the drugstore, picked up one, right, for a couple of dollars, right? Say you went, instead of no balloon displays anymore, no balloon displays. You just took that money and you put it towards a teacher for 5 years. That teacher could have made $100,000. It could have paid probably for 2 entry-level teachers over the course of those 5 years. Just put that into perspective. It could have given raises to maybe about 3 or 4 teachers. It could have given raises, hefty raises or bonus checks to teachers, right? So they're always bitching and moaning about how they're not paid enough, the teachers. Why don't they get upset about this kind of stuff, about the district spending that kind of money? Why doesn't CTU get upset about that kind of stuff? It's because they are leftist Democrats, and they're all in it together, and they're like they're all pals. And I don't know if their friend is a balloon vendor or what, and if they used balloon vendor, or they used the vendor, their friends as the vendors. I've got no idea why you would want to spend over $500,000 on balloons ever. Nobody should ever spend even $30 on balloons. I mean, I wouldn't even spend $30 on balloons. I hate balloons, by the way. I'm not a big fan of balloons. It's just kind of sad when they deflate and then they are kind of droopy and they only last a couple of days. And I'm just not a big fan of balloons just in general. So maybe I'm biased. I don't know. But that is just one example of government misspending your money, even at a local level, right? You've got this in McLean County where they've got people with two job titles, the same job title. Well, there's so much more that we can get to today. I do want to also talk about Scott Jennings on CNN blistering. He gave a blistering defense of this Fox News guy. I've actually met Pete Hegseth, our Secretary of Defense-elect, which is kind of cool to say. We were at a TPUSA event, and actually Pete Hegseth came up and chatted with us. He was really nice, and he goes, "What are you guys drinking?" You know, we were kind of having drinks at the table, and he bought us around drinks, which was like really nice. And you know, it's just a bunch of young college students, and he bought us all around drinks, which was like the nicest thing. Like he didn't even know who we were, so he's actually a really nice guy. But I think that they're putting Pete Hegseth in there. He's kind of like a carrot and stick method. He's not very diplomatic. He's just a regular guy. Now he's got so much credentials, though. I mean, he is a veteran. He's a CEO for a veterans advocacy organization. He's Harvard, I think Yale, really, really qualified guy. But he is a regular guy. I really do think that he's not this, bureaucrat or this diplomatic type guy. And I think with the Secretary of State being Marco Rubio and you've got Pete Hegseth, it's going to be like kind of carrot stick. And that's brilliant. Trump is, of course, filling these roles. Very brilliant. It's brilliant to have this carrot stick method. So we're going to get to Pete Hegseth here next. Woohoo! Hey, good morning. It's Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. My favorite part of the show. I was waiting forever to talk about the government misspending taxpayer dollars. Now, we see this at a local level. It's astronomical, the amount of money Champaign County actually spent on advocating for a tax referendum. So they spent all kinds of money on mailers, radio ads, TV ads, and your government does this as well, McLean County government. They'll spend a ton of money on radio ads, TV ads, advocating for you to, go and vote for the sales tax hike in Champaign County. They spent, I think it was like $68,000. And we don't even know because the expenditures we won't know until the end of the month. So that's insane to go and try to get people to vote for a tax hike. You probably wouldn't need the tax hike had you not been misspending the taxpayer dollars and spending it on advertising. I've told you multiple times, I don't think the government should be advertising because it's not really a business model where you need more people to come into your business to spend money, because you can just take the money as the government, right? You don't really need to advertise your services because those services will always be there. And to continue those services, you're just going to continue to tax the body. The base, your tax base. So they don't really need permission or they don't need to solicit you to spend money with them because they'll just take it from you. So before we took the break, I was telling you about these trans monkeys that Dr. Fauci spent a bunch of money on. So he transed the monkeys. Yes, that's quite literally what it means. What I'm saying is true. Trans procedure. So they created trans monkeys, chopped off their genitals to address social injustices. That was the reason for this $500,000 expenditure. They wanted to address social injustices by chopping up monkeys. That was done under the leadership of Dr. Fauci, who demanded you better follow the science. Tell me why transing the monkey addresses social injustices. I just don't understand. So another foolish example is the government spending millions of dollars. I think it was $3 million. Now, I really can't even wrap my head around this one. $3 million to get a shrimp to run on a treadmill for reasons that can never be justified. And now I guess they put the $3 million on the shrimp on the treadmill, and they wanted to see how the shrimp reacted in cold water and hot water. So you probably are thinking, oh, it's global warming, right? They wanted to see how wildlife reacts to warmer water. Is it a $3 million study? I don't think so. And I feel like you need to provide, hey, this is going to help the American people by in this way. Like, there needs to be tangible evidence that putting a shrimp on a treadmill in cold water is going to help the American people in some way, some tangible way. The founding fathers, they'd be rolling around in their graves. They would, if they could come back, they'd be like, what? They'd be like, but wait a second, you did what to the monkeys? For what reason? Wait a second. What's transgender? What do you mean, Caitlyn Jenner? What does this mean? They would be shocked at how much money we spend on stupid. This is money spent on things that nobody should spend money on. Nobody should spend money on. Transing the monkeys, shrimp on treadmills. And it was like a 2% tax. The Declaration of Independence. I talked about this yesterday because it was Veterans Day, and they gave up everything because they wanted to, declare their independence. They were upset that the government was using their tax dollars, and they kept up with this sentiment, the sentiment of pay your fair share. That was back in 1776, and a bunch of guys and a gentleman, like in a club, in a men's private club, they were smoking cigars, and they said, you know what, we're going to create a manifesto, and we're going to sign this. And Thomas Jefferson signed it, Ben Franklin signed it, and that is the Declaration of Independence. It was just a bunch of, wealthy-ish 1%ers, and they said, enough's enough, we're done. It was like a farmer, you had farmers there, you had lawyers, you had, just wealthy guys, and they said, this 2% tax is absolutely ridiculous. They taxed their beverages, right? The tea by like 1/4%. And then the Boston tea that's what sent them over the edge. If they found out that the Biden administration spent $5 billion to build not 10, not even 11, 7 EV stations, charging stations. They spent $5 billion to do that. Comparatively, let's look at the cost of a Tesla charger, which is about $100,000. You could have built like 28,000 if you used Tesla chargers, okay? But they did this no bid process, and this is how, your budget balloons. The budget never, zero-based budget, right? The budget never goes back. Once you grow the budget, it just keeps growing and growing. And we need to stop that, obviously, but they did no bids, right? They didn't bid out the building of these EV chargers. And had they done that, the Tesla charger, the guy who, the EV guy, Elon Musk, is going to be in charge of this. So he's going to know, hey, the Tesla charger is way less expensive. We could have had 28,000 EV stations for $5 billion, but instead we got 7 because they didn't bid out the contract. They probably bid it out to a friend. They have these one bids. They also spent $42 billion on rural broadband internet, which costs that nobody got connected to, by the way. It was $4 billion just down the drain because nobody even connected to the internet. They spent $42 billion on it, but nobody even got the internet. And then you have $5 billion on electric school buses. You gotta be kidding me. $5 billion on electric school buses. What's wrong with the buses we've got? My bus, when I was driving to school as a kid, it was there were holes in the seats, and it was a pretty bumpy ride, but we got to school, and we got to school safe. Okay, and I understand if the school buses aren't safe, but why are we spending money on these electric school buses? Not to mention the $5 billion for the electric school buses. Plus, you've got to maintain those things. It's difficult to maintain. We don't have any chargers. I just told you the EV stations, right? They costed $5 billion, and we've only got 7 of them. So, yeah, no doubt this can be done effectively. Where we cut the government. And the worst part is that nearly half of all government contracts only have one bid. That should not be happening. We should have bids, and we should pick the cheapest one. Okay. Bottom line. So I bet you Trump could go into the government, Elon Musk, Vivek, Ramaswamy, they could probably cut every single department in half, and you would not notice a difference. You would not notice a difference. I tell you all the time, have you ever utilized the government, and has it ever been a pleasant experience? No. No. Actually, fun story. This is a personal story. So I went and I had to go get my marriage license. Somebody was in the office there, and it took me several days to try to get this done. They only have like certain amount of hours, so it's like 8 to 3 p.m. and you have to book an appointment online to even like begin to try to get this license. It's a very difficult process, especially when you work, you know, like, and you both got to be there. So you work, and then you have to make an appointment in these like hours that aren't even banking hours, and it's like Tuesday through Thursday kind of deal. So you got to go do it, and yeah, sure, I'll go do it, and I made the appointment. I get there, and of course there's charges in order to obtain like copies of your marriage certificate. You got to like pay a bunch of money, whatever. But I get there to turn it in, all the paperwork and everything, and get my copies. And then they weren't even going to allow my certificate to go through because they were like, I don't like the way this letter looks. It doesn't quite look like I have an N in my name, in my full name, maiden name Peterson. And they were like, it doesn't really look like an N at the bottom here, or at the end of your name here. I don't know if we can accept this. Never have I ever. I mean, and of course she's masked behind the glass, right? This like bulletproof looking glass. And I'm thinking to myself, you gotta be kidding me. I pay all this money. I bet this woman's getting a hefty salary plus a hefty pension. And I was there and I was listening to some of the conversations. There was a woman there. I guess she was a school teacher for a while, and then she had retired, and then she decided to take up this gig. And they were talking about their pensions and everything like that. And she goes, yeah, I wanted to take this gig. There's such a big problem in McLean County government where you've got people working for a couple of years and then they start to collect pensions as well, $100,000 pension, and you've only worked there for a couple of years. Why the hell are you getting a pension? You only worked there a couple of years. So never have I gone into a government, and maybe once, maybe twice I've gone in. Now, this past, when I was in Logan County, it was really helpful, the voting, when I went to go vote. They did a great job. There was 2 election judges there, signature verification. It was no lines, nothing crazy. There were other people voting that day. And occasionally I'll have a good experience with government, but 9 times out of 10, I'm willing to bet that your experiences with government suck. You always avoid going to the DMV. I know you do. You always avoid going to the post office. I know you do. Any government service that you utilize, talk to somebody who has to, collect Social Security or has to, utilize certain services of the government. Talk to the VA, right? Talk to veterans. And I mean, every public sector, every government service that they provide, it usually sucks. So when I say this, I mean it. Anything the public sector does, the private sector could do it 100 times better. Another example, I wanted to provide you a local example, is the Chicago public schools. They're spending an increasing amount of taxpayer funds on balloon displays. Yes, you heard me right. Balloon displays in the past 5 years. So the school district has put more than $500,000 towards elaborate balloon displays for events and for graduations and celebrations at the Chicago Public School District. So the district has in recent years rapidly inflated its budget for balloon displays to mark occasions like back to school, graduation, or Black History Month. Oh boy. Now this was all chalkboard. They obtained this data. Now the CPS supplier payment data shows that the district spent, here's the grand total, folks, $600,593 on balloon-related vendors since 2019. In fiscal year 2022, the district spent $92,275 on balloon suppliers. Then it spent $49,183 in the same year before, so in 2021. Then in 2020, it spent $23,828 towards decorative displays. I mean, this is ridiculous. I mean, come on, folks. These are balloons. And I don't know about you, but I can't stand balloons. Maybe some people like them. I can't stand balloons. Me personally, I just think they're kind of sad. You know, once you get somebody a balloon, you give them a balloon and then they like start to fall and like they like get droopy after like a couple of days. So you waste all this money on the balloons and then they get droopy after a couple of days. So like, what's the point of spending all this money on a balloon? Now, flowers, you know, I understand that they die eventually. It doesn't take a couple of days. Usually you have a bouquet of flowers for, I don't know, a week, 2 weeks, something like that. And they release an aroma and they're kind of pleasant to look at. A balloon, nobody should spend money on balloons, in my opinion. Balloons, period. But $600,000? No, I don't think so. All right, I do have to take a quick break, but Peanut the squirrel, his assassination, it was planned a week before he was actually euthanized. They had written it out, the New York officials. They had planned to euthanize him a week before the actual break-in. I'm going to call it a break-in. The government broke in to this guy's house and killed the squirrel. They kidnapped, squirrel napped the squirrel and the raccoon, and then they killed them. That was all planned. So I do have to take a quick break, but you're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9. Yeah, same with Gates. Yeah, I don't know. It might be he might be a temporary pick, and then he moves on to be kind of like a hatchet man, clean house a little bit. Same with Gates. I hope that he keeps him for the duration of his administration, because the people have spoken. We want people in there who are not bureaucrats who have no government experience. We want people, outsiders, to come in, and we want it to upend really the bureaucracy. And I think that Pete Hegseth will be a great pick, and I hope he sticks with them. You know, this whole carrot stick method that he's got going with the Marco Rubio pick. Marco Rubio is a government bureaucrat. He's diplomatic, right? And he's been around. He's got the government experience, but then he's also got the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, who doesn't have any government experience, a very smart, quippy guy. And I think that this is a pretty cool approach. Same with Matt Gaetz. He's just going to be bulling the China jar. I'm excited about Matt Gaetz. So we've got so much to get to here on Conservative Cat. Go ahead, smash that like button, share this out with your friends. We are going to be getting to Peanut the squirrel. Poor little Peanut. They plan to kill him, you know, and that's kind of contrary to what these, New York Environment Agency, they said that they hadn't planned to go in there and kill him, but it was because Peanut bit a New York official there, that they had to euthanize him to test for rabies. And that turns out that it was a lie. The New York Department of Environmental Conservation Agency, they claimed Peanut had bitten an agent during the raid, supposedly necessitating a rabies test. And turns out that there is documentation that proves that they went in to try to kill the squirrel, or that they went in with intentions to kill the squirrel. They were given orders to euthanize those animals prior to even the raid. So really sad. We are going to be talking about Scott Jennings. He's not having any of it, where they're, ripping on Fox News host Pete Hegseth, Hegseth. I'm really excited about him. He's not really a controversial pick. Controversial in a sense that he isn't a career bureaucrat, but he's also educated, Harvard educated, 20-year combat veteran, is the CEO of a successful veterans advocacy organization. So not very controversial when you look at his credentials. He does actually have them. And like anybody, I think that, he's got to be appointed by the Senate. I think, yeah, appointed by the Senate, and he's got to go through hearings and answer questions. And like anybody, I think that he's got to make sure, he's got to prove that he's capable of doing that job. So I'm excited. I'm really excited to see what he does here with that position. Tulsi Gabbard, she's the National Intelligence Director, which I think is hilarious because they put her on a list, a terrorist watch list, and now she's the Director of National Intelligence. Haha. And I honestly do. John Fetterman actually came out and he said, I think that Trump's just trolling everybody with these picks. Yeah, I think so, which I'm all for, of course. So this is a great week. I think it's a great week. It's not a great week for Van Jones. We might get to this. He has a hilarious meltdown over how much it sucks to be a Democrat right now. Also, check this out. I got this from Target. Ask me about my pronouns. Please ask me about my pronouns so I can tell you that they are, I am an American and I voted for Donald Trump because I'm tired of people putting pronouns in their email signatures. So I got this from Target. I think it's hilarious. Ask me about my pronouns. They actually sell this crap. But yeah, that's my mug this morning. Ask me about my pronouns. I will be right back. You're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9. We're going to take a quick break. Woohoo! Hey, good morning. It's Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. We're going to be talking about, of course, Pete Hegseth. He's the pick. Scott Jennings, he gives this blistering defense of this Fox News guy, right? Pete Hegseth, being appointed by Donald Trump as the Secretary of Defense. Pete Hegseth, folks, he has all of the credentials, okay? He's Harvard educated, 20-year combat veteran. He is the CEO of a veterans advocacy organization, and he also is on TV. He's the Fox News host. Really fun story. I was actually at a TPUSA event, and Pete Hegseth is honestly a really nice guy. Now, I think that Donald Trump is doing this kind of carrot stick method where he's got Marco Rubio, the diplomatic type. He's kind of this carrot, right? He's diplomatic. He's got government experience. And then for the Secretary of Defense, he's got Pete Hegseth, who's kind of a firebrand. I love Pete Hegseth. He actually had we were all sitting down for dinner at a bar and grill. We were all having drinks, at this TPUSA event. He comes up and he starts chatting with us because he knows that we're, a part of the TPUSA event. And he starts talking with us college students. And he says, hey, what are you guys all drinking? And he goes, I'll get you a round. He goes, round on me. I mean, that is the coolest thing to say. I was like, wow, that's a really nice thing for somebody who doesn't know these. He just did it because he wanted us to enjoy the conference. And he sees how important the next generation is, the Gen Zers. We talked about them earlier, how, really culture, I mean, that's what got those Gen Z men out there. They said, hey, I'm sick and tired of men being in women's sports. It's gone way too far left for me. I mean, I'm not for aborting children at the 9th month and post-birth. I'm not for that. And I'm going in and I'm voting my conscience. I'm voting because I'm sick and tired of the left saying that this is what that this is the cultural norm to chop off people's genitals and require people to do trans surgeries on minors, and otherwise your kids are taken away. It's gotten to be too much. So I think the Gen Zers came out and they voted because they're sick. I don't think they're having intricate policy discussions, and they voted for Donald Trump based on policy. Really, I think it was a big, finger to the left saying, hey, I'm sick and tired of you telling me I'm transphobic because I don't agree that men should be in women's sports. And they went out there and they voted that way. I do want to talk about Peanut the squirrel. That's where I'm going to go this segment. And then we're going to come back and talk about Pete Hegseth and how Scott Jennings defended him. The American people said it this election cycle. We want political outsiders. We want non-government experienced people. That's what we said when we voted for Donald Trump. And it makes sense that he's making appointments like Matt Gaetz, right, where you've got Matt Gaetz, who is a firebrand, and a congressman, and he is just all in on MAGA. We voted MAGA, so we want MAGA. We're going to get to that, but first I do want to talk about Peanut, because this is just really grinding my gears this morning, and I got to talk about it because squirrel lives matter. Squirrel lives matter. The signs that the government has become too massive is, and they waste loads of resources by kidnapping American citizens, their pets, for reasons that will never be justified. I mean, they have become way too big. Meanwhile, we've got foreign nationals, we've got people housing foreign nationals, giving them credit cards solely because they broke federal immigration laws, because they're illegal and they entered the country illegally. We're giving them all kinds of money and we're wasting resources on that, but we're more concerned about American citizens' pets and taking them away from Americans and killing them. So I'm sure you've heard of these two murders of Peanut the squirrel and Fred the raccoon. The government claimed that they had tested these guys for rabies. Peanut tried to defend his territory. Obviously, when they raided the house, it was a family who owned a farm. They had a lot of animals there, and then they had this pet squirrel that they saved and rescued. The squirrel had like half of a tail, and they rescued the squirrel and had the squirrel for like 7 years or something crazy like that. So Peanut naturally was defending his territory from these evil monsters, and it turns out all of that was it was a lie. Peanut they said that Peanut bit one of the New York officials in the raid, and they had planned to kill these beautiful creatures, Fred and Peanut, prior to even going to the raid that day, prior to kidnapping them. Okay. So this is tyrannical government overreach. We know this. It's an understatement to say this is tyrannical. According to TMZ, Peanut the squirrel is officially in the clear, testing negative for rabies after his death. But get this, it also emerged that both he and Fred the raccoon were set for the chopping block days before they were seized in a raid. So they were kidnapped in this raid, and the owner is absolutely livid over it. They did not have to test for rabies to determine he was negative. He was literally an indoor squirrel. There was no need to test for rabies. There were zero signs of disease. Additionally, his owner spent nearly every second with the little guy. He became famous on TikTok, had like 3 million views, would eat waffles with his owner. He didn't have rabies, okay? So what could have been the motive here? I don't know what the motive really was. I think that they were trying to make an example out of him because, God forbid, you're entrepreneurial and you make a quick buck off of a squirrel that you're housing. People were giving money to this farm and donating to this farm because Peanut was so popular. And they didn't like that. I think that the tyrants hate joy so much they just couldn't stand for this level of happiness people experienced when watching Peanut. I watched Peanut regularly. I loved that squirrel. So I don't know if they were upset that they didn't get permission to own the squirrel. I have no idea what the tyrants were thinking. I think it was an example. They didn't want people making money off of pets on TikTok. So they made an example out of this guy. This is a level of government overreach the founders never intended government to have. The founders, had they found out about this, they probably would have been like, their jaws just dropping. So Mark Longo, he's the guy who owned the squirrel. He didn't hold back telling TMZ it's hard to stomach the bombshell revelation that 4 different agencies had already given the green light to euthanize his pets 7 days before they were actually taken from his upstate New York property on October 30th. The New York Post reports state officials advised the county to euthanize the animals a week before the raid was launched. So they went in there to kill the animals. Okay, that was their goal. So this news contradicts actually the New York Department of Environmental Conservation. They claimed that they had to kill Peanut because he bit an agent during a raid, supposedly necessitating a rabies test. And apparently you have to euthanize the animals to properly test for rabies. Okay. Why? Why did you have to murder this poor little guy? What's wrong with these people? So they just search for ways to feel in control. This is you're truly abused by your government. They search for ways to feel in control, and by killing, your pets, they feel like they've got the ultimate control over your life. So this is proof that there is waste in the government. We were talking about waste earlier. CPS spending $600,000 on balloons in the past 5 years, which is absolutely insane. And then they're going to cry about how the teachers aren't paid enough. With $600,000, you could have paid a teacher a $100,000 salary for 6 years. Okay. And then to top it all off, right, they're, asking for raises, more teachers. There's not enough teachers in the classroom. Wah! Although enrollment is down. So why the hell do you need more teachers? Doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Why don't we cut the administration, which is ballooned by like 80% since, what was it, I can't remember the date. I think it's like 2019 or something like that. Administrative costs, like, so your principals, your superintendents, those guys have been growing. Meanwhile, we've got enrollment decreasing. So anyway, Fred and Peanut, they need justice. They need justice for their state-sanctioned murder. And I actually am going to put a petition out there. There's a change.org petition to hold the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation governor's office and the New York State legislature accountable for their actions in this murder. So I am going to put that up on my Facebook page. You guys can sign it. Fred and Peanut, they need justice. I do need to take a quick break, but people are saying this is a controversial pick. I think Pete Hegseth is a great pick for Secretary of Defense. It makes sense. He was a 20-year combat veteran, and he's an outsider, which is exactly what people voted for this past election cycle. So I'm going to be right back. You're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9. Woohoo! Hey, good morning. It's Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. Yeah, I really don't think that this is a controversial pick. I really don't think so. So Pete Hegseth, he's the Secretary of Defense elect. I guess he's got to be appointed, right? And he's got to go through this hearing. I think that this is awesome. That Pete Hegseth is going to be the Secretary of Defense, because it's kind of like this carrot stick method. You've got Marco Rubio, he's the Secretary of State, a little bit more diplomatic. Then you've got Pete Hegseth, who is a bit more of a firebrand, and I think that he's got this outside ability to be kind of that stick when dealing with adversaries, foreign adversaries. So Scott Jennings on CNN, he came to the defense, of course, of Pete Hegseth, because CNN, the panelists there, were saying that it's controversial. He's not qualified, and he's the lone voice. Scott Jennings, for those of you who don't know, he's the lone voice when it comes to sanity, he's the only sane voice on that program, the most trusted name in news, CNN. Now, I'm sure that they watch Fox News all the time, these CNN panelists here, and they wouldn't have anything to talk about if they didn't watch Fox News and, complain about it. But I want to play this clip of Scott Jennings, and you'll hear Abby Phillips jump in. This is her panel. And Scott Jennings, he poses a question. He says, does anybody really have faith in current leadership of the Pentagon? And does anybody really like the current picks of Joe Biden? You can't sit here and tell me that you're worried about Pete Hegseth when you won't even come out and say that the picks of Joe Biden are just completely awful. And here we go. Let's take a listen.
Anyone have confidence in the current leadership of the Pentagon and the way the defense situation has been operating for the last several years? I mean, from the Afghanistan pullout, which was an extreme debacle for which no one was held accountable. We've had spy balloons flying over the United States. We built a $300 million pier as a public relations stunt, which wound up killing an American service member. I'd say I've had just about enough of the so-called insiders running the Defense Department. I think we ought to give Pete Hegseth a chance, because he's got two insiders. All the criticism of him is that he's not the expected Washington pick. And I'm just saying to you that the American people just voted against the expected Washington pick. So he's got 20 years in service, Afghanistan, Iraq, 2 Bronze Stars, Princeton, Harvard. Yeah, he's on TV, but so are the rest of us.
By the way, I
think he ought
that
to
listen
be
you just gave is really interesting, because you highlighted a bunch of things that the civilian leadership of the country decided on. In the military, their job was just to execute. They execute.
How did it go?
I'm just saying.
How did it go?
In terms of the decision making, you're assigning decision making responsibility to the military over things that civilians are responsible for.
So you make a good point. The civilian leadership made decisions, and then the people they put in charge of the Pentagon carried it out, and it was all pretty much a disaster. So now we have a new president who I think got elected in part because of some of those disasters, and he's going to put in some of the non-insiders in charge of not just this agency, but a bunch of them. Now, look, they've got to perform. They've got to perform. I mean, we got 53 U.S. senators that are Republicans, and Pete Hegseth, he's an American hero. The man won 2 Bronze Stars for his service, and he's been a champion for veterans. He's going to have to go up there just like everybody else and prove his knowledge of how to do this job. He's not immune from that, but we ought to give this man a chance, in my opinion.
Yeah. We ought to give this man a chance. Yeah. So we've had spy balloons flying over the United States. We built a $300 million pier as a public relations stunt, which wound up killing an American service member. We remember that story, the Afghanistan pullout, which was an extreme debacle for which no one was held accountable. So, yeah, we don't really like the defense situation, right? I mean, are we happy with Joe Biden's picks, his expert picks? I don't think so. Under the current regime, recruitment is also at an all-time low, dangerous low levels. So 62% of veterans would not recommend military service to young people. So, yeah, trusting the experts. Let's go with the traditional Washington, D.C. pick. No, Donald Trump was elected by the American people to disrupt exactly that, to disrupt the Washington, D.C. experts. and the people who control Joe Biden. He was elected to do that. They've been controlling Joe Biden over the past several years. Joe Biden, by the way, doesn't even know who his Secretary of Defense is. Quite literally, there's been several clips of him not even knowing Lloyd Austin's name. So there's several clips of him out there not even knowing who his Secretary of Defense even is. He can't even say his name. He doesn't even know his name. So they elected Donald Trump to bring down the people in this broken government bureaucracy, and he's going to fix this broken government bureaucracy. So does Pete Hegseth have government experience? Well, no, but that's a good thing. And I think that there's a lot of jealousy going on here as well on this CNN panel. You've got these CNNers, these colleagues of Jennings, and they're probably just all upset because they weren't the ones hired by the president for the next 4 years, right? For 12 years, 4 to 12 years, this MAGA movement is going to go on. It's going to go on far beyond 2028, and I think that JD Vance is a shoo-in, especially if we can change things around. So up next, I do want to end on this FEMA worker. I brought it up earlier in the show, but I think that this is an important story. This fired FEMA worker was taking orders from the higher-ups, allegedly, when she told her team to ignore the houses that were affected by Hurricane Milton, ignore the houses that had Trump signs. I think there's more to this story that we're not getting, but I do want to get to that, plus CNN laying off hundreds of employees after massive drops in ratings during the election cycle. All of that and more ahead here on Conservative Cat. Woohoo! Hey, good morning. It's Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. Joe Biden, he fired every single attorney in the DOJ when he started his term, and then he installed Merrick Garland, who protected him and his son for 4 years. And Merrick Garland, we all know, relentlessly went after Trump's attorneys, Trump's supporters. Don't worry. There's nothing Matt Gaetz will do that could ever top what Merrick Garland has done. So don't worry, you're going to be fine under Matt Gaetz, okay? I'm so excited. I do also want to chat about, of course, this FEMA employee who was fired. I want to get to that because she said that she took orders from the higher-ups when she told her team, she's a FEMA worker, and she told her team to ignore the houses with Trump signs after Hurricane Milton, and FEMA, was supposed to provide aid to people. So not only did FEMA waste loads of its funding on foreign nationals, putting them up in hotels, solely for the reason that they broke federal immigration law. They're an illegal immigrant, so they get all of these pleasantries like credit cards and hotel rooms. Not only did they do that, but they also instructed teams to ignore houses and not provide aid to houses who had politically incorrect lawn signs, so Trump signs. So this is deliberately an attack against the people they're tasked to help with. They're supposed to help everybody despite political affiliation. And this is just reprehensible. But here's my thing about this. I really don't understand this story so much because after a hurricane, there's usually not a whole lot of Trump signs. I think the story is a little bit deeper. So according to the New York Post, Marnie Washington is her name. She was fired for telling disaster relief workers in Florida to not go to homes with yard signs supporting President-elect Trump. Now, that is according to the administrator of FEMA, Deanne Criswell. So this was an actual thing. She said this is a clear violation of FEMA's core values and principles. We should help people regardless of their political affiliation. Yeah, but I think it goes deeper. So this woman had come out and said that higher ups, people at the tippity top of FEMA, told her to do this. And then she had disclosed that there were emails back and forth, or there was files being deleted by her higher ups after she was let go. I think the real story here is that FEMA was giving orders, maybe not necessarily the Trump signs, but giving orders to avoid areas that predominantly vote red or vote for Donald Trump in 2020. That's more believable than, because you don't even have Trump signs after a hurricane. They're wiped out. They're blown away. So, quote, this is the FEMA administrator, Deanne. She says, I will continue to do everything I can to make sure this never happens again. What I think they're doing is making this woman who they fired a scapegoat. I think that they're actually trying to get her to fall on the sword, and they're going to point to this woman and they're going to say, see, we actually fired her. We held her accountable. See, Trump, don't be mad at us. We actually we're doing our jobs. Don't be mad at us. We fired this girl. You know, and I think that she's a scapegoat. I think that they're pretending to care. And I think that it's much worse than just one person telling one team to not go to some houses with Trump signs. I think it's so much worse. I bet FEMA, I'd love to see what were in those deleted files. I bet FEMA was telling multiple FEMA directors, multiple FEMA teams to avoid red areas, certain counties who voted for Donald Trump back in 2020. You know, and I'm kind of curious, what do you think would have happened had Trump not won the presidency? I don't think that this story would even exist. I think that she would have been promoted. I think because Trump won the presidency, they had to make her a scapegoat. They had to find somebody to fire to kind of throw off the scent and try to throw Trump off from going after them. So the federal government, they've proven they are not in it for the American people. Well, that's going to do it for our show. You guys have a blessed day.